Welcome to Highline Excel class number 20. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on my YouTube channel and click on my college website link and you can download the workbook, Week 3, Business 214. Hey, and this and if you're in the class, of course, go to our Week 3 website. Hey, this video we're going to talk about pivot tables. We got 18 tricks or 18 different aspects that we want to look at for pivot tables. First thing is, what is a pivot table? Actually, before that, you got to have it set up properly. Your data, field names at the top, records and rows, no blanks anywhere, as we've talked about many times in this data series here. So that's the first thing. You got to have your data set up correctly. Second thing is, what is a pivot table and how do you get your head around it? Usually when you first do a pivot table, you're like, what? But here's the trick. If I scroll over here, and here's the table, and this is summarized data. These are the sales rep from the sales rep columns over there, and the products. If I go look over here, oh yeah, there's the products. There's the sales reps over here, zip, right there, and there's the sales. So what I'm going to do is summarize in a table with two criteria. So here it is, this cell right here. Got a bunch of fences there. This cell right here is asking the question, please add up all the sales that meet the criteria sales rep Jerry and product Bellin. So Jerry sold $26,817 worth of Bellin. So this is a table format where criteria is listed in the row headers and the column headers. So at the intersection of any row and column, the two criteria, column header, row header, please add up all the sales with those two criteria. That's the setup. If you understand this and this, then pivot tables, at least doing it the first few times, should be quite easy. Now to do this, here's one formula. There's lots of other formulas to summarize in a table like this, but that is too hard when you have pivot tables. So let's see how to create a pivot table. Now here's our data set. We have blanks all the way around, so the data set isn't touching anything else. Click in one cell, and then in 2007, you go to Insert, Pivot Table, Pivot Table. In earlier versions, you go to the Data menu and then Pivot Table. The keyboard shortcut is Alt-N for Insert, V-T. You can see right there. Now, if you do this all the time, you memorize that. There's one in earlier version too. This 2007 gives you a one-step wizard. In earlier versions, you would go Alt-D-P. And this would open up the old three-step wizard, which actually will allow you to do multiple consolidation ranges, which is not in this current version. So you actually have to know that keyboard shortcut from earlier versions to get to that. We're not going to do that in this class. I'm going to click Cancel. All right, ready? Insert Pivot Table, NVT, or Insert Table, Pivot Table. I'm going to say a new worksheet and then just click OK. By the way, this dialog box, it combined the three steps from earlier pivot tables. Here's the range. We could use external data. Is this going to go in the new worksheet? OK, the location. We don't need to put it because we've got a new worksheet. Click OK. Now, I have mine by default set up to look like 2003. So I'm actually going to show you how to do a 2003 pivot table first, because you actually have to, you have a field list that looks a little bit different than this. But you don't have this in an earlier version. But there are your fields from the table. Remember I said there's some row headers and some column headers? That's the trick conceptually to building a pivot table. We wanted our sales rep. So in 2003, you click on the field name and you have to drag it. Notice the cursor and that blue. If I drag it up there, it looks like it's going to be the column header. If I drag it there, you can see the row header. If I'm here, you see the blue is in the bulk of the table. So that's the trick. You could also do the gray boxes. Drag it to the row, and then we wanted product, drag it to the column, and then we want sales, drag it to the data area, and that's it. That is so much easier than doing it with formulas and quite fast. Now let me show you how to change this to 2003. You can right-click over here and point to Remove Sales. Right-click Remove. You can also do it with your mouse. Right-click Remove. There it is. So now we're back to normal. Here's how you change it, and you can toggle between 2003 and 2007. 2007, you cannot drag it into the sheet. So some people that do earlier versions like to be able to drag into the sheet. And here's how you get this to show up. Right-click. pivot table options, and the display, pivot table options display. And there it is, classic layout. Click OK. Oh, now we're back to 2007. That's how you see it in 2007. And what they've done is they built this little field list and then this drag drop area over here. So again, if you know that we have row headers and column headers, it's quite easy. I'm going to take my sales rep and click and drag to the row area. Then I'm going to take my product, click and drag to the column area. You can see that it's forming over here. Finally, sales. Now I'm going to, in 2007, you can click on these and drag them. I'm going to drag them back to here. And that's actually how you can also do it in earlier versions. You can also, if you don't like dragging down to this area, you can right click. So I'm going to go to sales rep, right click, add to row labels. I love that. And then right click, add to columns. And then down here, you can right click, add to values. There it is. Okay, so there we have our table. That's a couple different methods in 2007 and 2003. I want to get rid of these in 2007. You can just uncheck these. And now I want to show you how to group by a date. Now remember our data set back over here. Actually, let's name this sheet right here. Double click it, and I'm going to call it PT for pivot table. Notice here's our data, right? There's our data. Notice we have dates. An amazing feature of pivot tables is you don't have to use like year function or month function or any of those tricks to summarize by month. The pivot table knows how to do it. Let's go over here. I'm going to add date to the row labels. And there it is. There's all the dates. And you simply right-click, group. And the trick is if you have multiple years, you have to select not only months, but years, which we do in this data set. That's it. Click OK. And look at that. Just like that, a snap of the finger, we've grouped by month and year. Amazing. Now we can simply take our sales and drag it down to values. That is amazing how quickly you can do that. So we've grouped by months and year. And notice over here, they still have the date up at the top, but they've added this year down here. Now, I want to do actually 4 fields here. Right now we have 2, right? Years and date. I'd like to add region and product. Now watch this. I'm going to move the year over to the column and the date over to the column. So now it's like they're column headers. And now I want to add region and product. So I'm going to find my region. There's region. I'm going to drag it down to the rows. And then product. I'm going to drag it down to the row here. And just like that, we don't have a data set that has data for all of that. But look at that. 1, 2, 3, and 4 criteria. Amazing how quick that is to do compared to with formulas or something like that. You have to do a big array formula. Now, I want to get rid of those 2 fields. I can simply come down here, click and drag, click and drag. I'm going to move my months over here. No way. So I can have months down this side and years. Remember, we just have 1 date field, and yet with a pivot table, we're allowed to do that quickly and separate it, one as a row header and one as a column header. Now, let's do a little formatting. And we saw this in our earlier videos when we did formatting for tables, Excel tables. By the way, our data here I have set up, I think, as a table. No, it doesn't look like I have it as a table. That's just list. If you set it up as a table, as we mentioned earlier, then if you add records to this, your pivot table, you can right-click refresh. And that's the trick. Right-click refresh, and then it will update and get those new records. Now I want to do some formatting, so we're going to go up to, oh, look, pivot table tools. There's some options. There's some things up here, some things you'd want to do, and also up in our design ribbon. Now here's our style. I'm just going to click this one maybe right here. So very quickly you can format your whole pivot table. Another feature, amazing feature, it's called drill down. And watch this. Double click a cell and it will extract the records that made up that particular entry in our pivot table and insert a new sheet. So you ready? I'm going to double click. And just like that, we only had 2 records. It knew which 2 records and created a whole new sheet. That is just amazing. I'm going to call this, that was 2005 February. So I'm going to name this sheet FEB05. And you can do that for any particular intersection in your pivot table. And it will insert a new sheet and show you all the records that made that up. Now, so we did our styles. Now, right now we're summarizing. It says sum of sales. I'd like to show you how to change the function. You can just right-click and value field settings. Value field settings are also options, active field. I always have my screen pretty scrunched up here, so you see this totally different. And then field settings. And it finds sum of sales. But watch this. You have 11 functions. Just like we saw with subtotals, there's 11 functions. So you can pick whichever one you want. I want to pick average. It changes the label. Click OK. And sure enough, now it's calculating average. Is that amazing? Now, what about the formatting? We could highlight the whole table and then do our formatting from up here. But wait a second. When you pivot the pivot table, and change elements, formatting does not always stay. So here's how you add number formatting. We can right-click, go to Value Field Settings, and not only can we change the function right there, but we can change our number format. Very important. And I'm going to say currency. Click OK. Click OK. So now we have our currency. So we use the Value Field Settings for function, change the function, and the number formatting. Now, pivoting. How easy is it to pivot? I just did it earlier, and I didn't even call it pivoting. But let's grab our year and move it down here, and then our date, which was really our month, and move it over here. Oh, well, look at that. So I'm going to take my year and move it on top, and you kind of have to watch for that blue bar. So now we've pivoted it, right? Our format stuck because we did number format through the value field settings. Now I'm going to click my date up here. So now I have year here and month there. So that's why it's called a pivot table, because it's so easy to pivot. Now I want to change. I want to add product and year only. So watch this. I'm going to uncheck or right-click, there's a little drop down here. And it says remove down at the bottom. You can't see it. That's off the screen. Remove. So now we have years. Now I want to move years over here, and then I want to take product and drag it down here. Is that just amazing how quickly you can do things? Really, most people think, oh yes, the most powerful feature in Excel is pivot tables. It takes a lot of very complicated formula creating just out of the picture, and you just drag and drop in there. You're changing things on the fly. Now I have a product and year. I want to create a pivot chart. Yeah, once you create a table, then it's easy to create a pivot chart. Options, and we have a tools, pivot chart. But hey, guess what? You don't have to do it that way. If you have your pivot table cursor there and you go to your insert, just like normal, you can create, when you create any one of these charts, it'll create a pivot chart. And actually it has your original field list over here, but also some additional filtering options. So if I scroll over here, the axis field, this is product. We can see this right here. Let's say we wanted to, whoa, look, there's filters. So just as we saw with filters, we can come down here and maybe uncheck everything and just show the Aspen, the Bellin, and the Carlota. And just like that, we see Aspen, Bellin, and Carlota. And by the way, in the pivot table too, under here somewhere, if we were in the middle of a chart doing that, but it actually changed the pivot table. So that feature is here also in the pivot table. Whoa, you can sort too. Absolutely amazing. So pivot chart, a great feature because you can summarize so quickly with a pivot table and then represent it visually with a chart. Now I'm going to close this and actually scoot this over here, over to the side. Right now, we have this chart here, and this chart, if we go changing all this, will totally change. They're interconnected. So I actually want to leave this here. I want to copy the sheet over, this whole sheet over. So I'm going to point to the sheet, hold Control, click, and drag up. I'm clicking on the sheet while holding Control, and you can see that plus symbol, which means copy. I'm going to let go of my mouse, but not my Control, and now I can let go of my Control. I'm going to call this Pivot Table 2. That's fine. Click on this chart and delete. Now I want to do 4 last things. 3 of them have to do with formulas and pivot tables, and 1 of them has to do with the great show report filtered pages. Now let's add the field list. Right click, show field list. And for this one, I just want year. So I'm going to get rid of the product. Click and drag. Click and drag. I'm going to pivot this, bring the years down to row. And I want to create a formula. Now look at this. We have gross profit and sales. If we divide those two, we have gross profit percent. Now these are fields, just like if you were doing access databasing. So our formulas here are formulas on fields instead of what we usually think of in Excel as formulas on cells. So I'm going to go up to Options. Oh, and there it is, Tools. My ribbon is very small here, but there's Formulas. There's a pivot chart. There's Formulas. Calculated field is what we're going to do. And let's put a name, so gross profit. I'm going to get rid of that 0, backspace. And we simply divide our fields, or whatever it is. If you didn't have gross profit, you could just say sales minus cost of goods sold. And then that calculated field for whatever criteria would always calculate the actual gross profit. But we have a field there, so I'm going to double click that. And then divide by our sales. That'll give us gross profit percentage when we format it. Now, by the way, that table over there actually did not need gross profit. And when you make store data, you want to store only the original raw data in its smallest pieces. So really, this is an unnecessary column in that particular database. But that said, many databases have unnecessary columns. All right, so there's our formula. I'm going to click Add. Click OK. And just like that, it calculates for each year the gross profit percent. But let's change this. I'm going to right click, value field settings. I'm going to say GP space percent. And I'm going to come down here to the number format because I want to show it as a percent. Or that one right there, and 2. Click OK. Click OK. Sure enough, now we have our gross profit percentage. Now, a couple other types of formulas. I'm going to look down here at the field list. Oh, look at that. It created a brand new field. I'm going to uncheck that. Actually, uncheck both of those. And we want to do product sales. Let's grab our sales now that we're down here at the bottom of the list. Drag that to values. We'll go up and I'll get our products. Drag it down to row. And we want our date, which is really our month, along the columns. So now, let's only show January, February, March, April. How do we do that? We come down here to our drop down. Oh, looks like I already did that. Why is select all? What did I do wrong? Oh, I must be falling asleep at the wheel. I definitely only want Aspen, Bell, and Carlota just so we can see clearly. And then we come up here. I must be asleep. And we want January, February, March, April. Click OK. Now our table is a little bit smaller. So we've selected only some items. Now what I want to show you here is a behind-the-scenes formula that will calculate all sorts of cool things. One thing is the difference from. So for many sales summarization, you want to find out the difference between these two, and then the difference between these two. So the difference between months. So here's how you do it. Right click, value field settings, and show value as. We saw how to do our functions. We saw how to do our number formatting, but show value as. And here's the drop down. Now I'm in this video going to show you difference from and percentage difference from. If you go to my YouTube channel, I have a playlist for pivot tables, or you can search, and I pretty much show all the different ones, and especially in some of my statistics videos. All right, so let's show difference from. It's just figuring out the difference between periods. Now, the base field is going to be our date, because what we're trying to find is the difference between this and this for sales, for Aspen. So from this month to this month. And we want previous. You could do it all from January, which sometimes that's the case, but we want previous. So the one from the previous. So each formula result here will say what is the difference from the month before, and then click OK. Now that means from January to February we went up by 826. From February to March we went up down minus 4,676. Now sometimes when you do this you want to actually see the sales too. So this is an example where you'd actually add the same field twice. So we see sum of sales and we have our little calculation. Now I'm going to drag sales down right above and drop it right there. Now we have the actual value, of course, for actually let's go like this. Let's put sum of sales below. Whoop. So now we have oh, that's our calculation because we didn't. So we want to go sum of sales this. Let's rename these. This is getting confusing. So there's our sum of sales. I'm going to right click this and go down to value field settings. I cannot make any sense. And I'm going to call this difference from previous, just to make it short there. There you go. That's the difference from previous. So now we have, and this one we need to rename. Ooh, yuck. Value field settings. Now watch this. Here's an important trick. If we type sales here, right, the pivot table will not allow that because the field is named that. So watch this. I'm going to put a space, and that's a little trick. That way we'll be officially able to put that as a name. Sales, difference from, oh yeah, we didn't have one. But here's February sales, and this is what we went up by 862. Here's the sales for March. Oh, wow, we went down from the previous. Sales for April, and then we went up. So that's example difference from. Now let's look at percentage difference. So I'm going to right click, go down to field settings, and we'll just select a different one. Show values as. And right here, difference from, instead of that, we'll do percentage difference from. Now if you do data summarization a lot, and then you get used to it. So at first, it's a little bit tricky, especially selecting your base field. But if you do it a lot, it gets quite easy. You can just do it in just lightning fast. I'm going to click OK. And now we have, oh, the percentage difference. Ooh, there's that minus 87% drop. There's that, ooh, up by 171. Wow. Okay, so one last thing. And I'm going to actually drag all of this off here, just one after the other. And I want to show you the report filter. We haven't talked about this, but oh, is it powerful. A couple amazing things. Let's do products. I'm going to do products into the row. Region, we haven't done region yet. We're going to go up to region, and we're going to drop that in the report filter. That shows up here, and this filters the whole report. So we have products, region. Now let's do sales. And again, you can make this as complicated as you want. But the amazing thing is you can then, and in 2007, you're given this option to select multiples. And earlier, you can only select one at a time. But let's just do the 2 northeast there, right? And so the whole thing is just showing us the 2 northeast. Now I'm going to come up here, and so you can do it however you want. I'm going to click all, click OK. Here's the amazing thing. Notice that this pivot table sheet is sitting here. There's our data sheet. Now we're going to go up and click inside the pivot table somewhere to get our context sensitive ribbons. We're going to go to Options, Pivot Table Options, and Show Report Filter Pages. In earlier versions, this wasn't report, but page filter. And I have notes in this worksheet when you download it to show you how to do this. But once you click this, what does it do? it takes let me go up here, it takes every single one of these and makes a new sheet. So you will end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new sheets. So instead of building the 5 pivot tables individually and printing them out or distributing them however you want, you use this automatic pivot table creator. Click OK. Again, it's options, pivot table, options, options, and then show report filter pages. Now, once I click this, it's just going to go bloop at the bottom. Oh, not quite. It's going to ask us show all, because you can have more than one report filter. We just want that one. Click OK, and bloop, just like that down here at the bottom. I'll close the field list. And there is our original pivot table, and there is one pivot table for each one. Now, the power of this is when you have, 70 employees or sales reps or something like that, and you need a summarization for each one. That really demonstrates the unbelievable power of pivot tables. All right, that's it for our week 3. Pivot tables are totally amazing. All right, we'll see you next video.